Tech Legion, and we'll be taking a look at the Intel Visual BIOS for the Intel DZ77GA-70K motherboard. If you are looking for an Intel branded motherboard for your new Ivy Bridge 70 series processor or K processor, this should be the board that you should want to take advantage of. It is made specifically for it. It is tuned specifically for that processor, those types of processors. If we take a look at it, of course, on the left hand side we have the Intel Visual BIOS moniker. To the right, the Intel Extreme board inside. Now this is Intel's first run for Intel with a Visual BIOS. So there's a lot of nice features to it, and it really does work fairly well. Now if we go down towards the bottom, it tells us which board we're using, the BIOS version, and the processor, total memory, system date and time. Now we also have a boot order here. This boot order here, basically if you click on this, which I'm not going to do, it will ask you if you would like to boot from that specific drive. So you could go ahead and boot off that drive after you correct your savings, etc. Then you have an advanced button on below. The advanced button brings you into the boot drive options, which is also going to bring you into your advanced mode. We'll get back into that in a minute when I go over the advanced setup. To the right we have processor. It's showing basically 3 tabs: processor, graphics, and memory. Set this PC's performance. Right now it's currently running at 4.8 gigahertz. You do have a slider here which you could slide over your settings. Now on the bottom we have a tuning button, devices button, SATA configuration, and profiles. This allows you to store profiles. So if you have a nice profile that you'd like to save and like to use, you can go ahead and store that profile on here. Now all those buttons down below, the tuning, devices, SATA, and profiles, they bring you to advanced mode. So we'll be looking at advanced mode in a second. At the very bottom you have a tab. It basically gives you your options on how to use how to go through the BIOS. You have your tab, which is the next option, this escape, enter, F9 to load defaults, Alt, reveal shortcut keys, F10, save and exit, and you also have a search on here. Now, when we click the Over tab, you're going to see a picture of the slot and port connections. It's going to tell you what's in there, what type of controller, etc., what type of devices are being used. You also have a performance monitor which shows you your fan speeds, your temperatures and voltages, and then of course here is your SATA devices, and it will tell you what is plugged into each of the SATA ports. Going farther over, of course we have our system information, desktop board information, chassis information, and other information as in processor type, processor signature, and Intel Management Engine firmware. So let's go ahead and go back to the very beginning and let's click on Advanced Setup. Advanced Setup is basically a way so you don't have to click on the individual icons. So once you click on Advanced, it's going to bring up some more tabs here, and then you'll have your main. Your main basically is going to give you your processor information, how much L2 cache, L3 cache is in there, the processor signature, etc. System date and time, this is where you can change that. It's going to show you your memory information, and it also has event logging. From there we could go to our different BIOS default start pages if we want, when we come down to the bottom here. Home page 1, 2, 3, advanced main, devices, etc. Going to our next tab is devices and peripherals. Our first tab is going to be USB. This will show you what you have on board and if they are enabled or disabled, and it'll also show you your USB ports. This does have 14 USB ports, so you can enable or disable any one of them individually. Sata drives. How do you want to set up your SATA? So basically right now I have it on AHCI. You could either go AHCI, IDE, or RAID. And your hard disk pre-delay. Secondary SATA, I do have that enabled at this time. Video and other devices. This is for your video settings for your internal graphics. It also sets your primary adapter, whether you want it to be for your discrete card or for your internal graphics, because the Ivy Bridge processor does have, on the same die, it does have a DirectX 11 graphics processor now. So with Sandy Bridge we had DirectX 10, Ivy Bridge we've moved to DirectX 11. Also, another good thing about this is it does support the Lucid Virtue. Lucid Virtue gives you the option to either use your discrete or your onboard graphics in tandem, so you could use things like QuickSync to transcode videos quicker, etc. Moving over to cooling. This basically shows us our real-time monitoring, our fan speeds, temperatures, temperature thresholds. The next tab shows fan speeds, CPU header, front header, rear header, auxiliary header. It gives you sliders so you can change the thresholds of your fan. So if you want your fan to be at a certain speed, go ahead and change it. You could change the control mode to auto. If you do click this down, you could change the CPU header to something else if you wanted. Temperatures. This gives you your temperatures and your thresholds for your CPU. Basically what you're going to see is you're going to see processor, PCH, memory, and your VRM. And this is where you can set those temperature thresholds. Under thresholds, these are your adjustments for your voltages, under volt, over volt thresholds. It gives you a lot of options to play with: your 12 volt rails, 5 volt rails, 3.3 volt rails, your PCH, your memory VCC, processor VCC, and your 3.3 standby. Under performance, we have our performance settings. This is going to be the summary. Basically, of course, Intel does, even though these are great processors and they do performance tune well, Intel, as much as they would like you to, get the best out of everything, you might void your warranty for performance tuning a little bit too much, and if you burn your processor, you might have a problem with that. But in any case, we have a fail-safe Watchdog, which is enabled. We also have a host clock frequency in megahertz. That's our base clock, so we're at 100 megahertz right now. Processor overrides. Right now I have the turbo boost set to 48. Default is 39 because 3.9 would be the default for this this specific processor. Its main operating frequency is 3.5 with a turbo boost of 3.9. I have it set to 48, which is 4.8 gigahertz, so it is going to stay there. I have set it to only run at 4.8 gigahertz. Then we have our memory overrides, we have our graphics overrides, and our voltage overrides. Processor. Processor primary settings. Basically, processor voltage override. Right now it's on default. You could go for different voltages. CPU voltage offset and middle volts. Core limit ratios. That's, of course, is your turbo cores. As you can see, again, 4.8 gigahertz. To the right here we have a processor secondary settings, which is our speed step technology, C-states, turbo boost technology, burst mode, sustain mode, TDCs, hyperthreading, PLL voltages, etc. Right now, of course, I have it to high V droop. Under memory, Memory primary settings. I have it set to the XMP profile here. It is going to just automatically, once you set it on an XMP, it will pick up your XMP profile and set it to what the XMP is on the memory. If not, you could always change your secondary settings here on the right hand side. Then of course we could go to our graphics. Graphics, with the onboard graphics, Intel has also made that performance tunable. You can overclock that also. So right now I am not currently performance tuning the internal graphics, but as you can see, you have a voltage override, the ratio limit, TDC override, and the host frequency clock. Right now the current preset is to the BIOS default, which is 1.150 gigahertz. On the secondary settings, we have a burst mode power limit, sustained mode power limit, and sustained mode time. Moving to our next tab is our security tab. Basically, you want to set a password on there. You don't want anybody to get into your system. This is how you do it. You could also, this also shows your MAC address, your chassis intrusion, virtualization technology, and VT for directed I/O. Under power technology options. Enhanced Intel speed step, processor C states, OS ACPI, which is another C state, ACPI suspend state, rapid start technology. In the review you'll see about that. We talk about rapid start and smart connect. Hibernation timer. On the system power options, after power failure, what is it going to do? Does it have a wake on LAN? These are your S states. These are all your states to enable it to do the hybrid sleep or the different power saving states. Under boot, we have our boot options. General optimization, enable, USB optimization, video optimization, boot devices, USB boot, boot USB first, boot optical drives, removable drives, boot to network, and of course to the right is our boot priority. Boot display options, expansion card text, post, display F2, display F7. These are basically when you're booting up, what's going to happen when you boot up. What can you hit on these hotkeys to get to where you want? If you want to go for a network boot, hit F12. If you want to go for a boot menu, go to F10. If you want to flash your BIOS, F7, F2 to enter the BIOS setup. And then last but not least, our last two tabs here are going to be the load defaults and exit tab. We'll go back to the home and take a look at that again. This has been our overview of the Intel Visual BIOS for the Intel Desktop DZ77GA-70K Motherboard, codenamed Gasper. Thank you for watching. Stay thirsty, my friends. For the full review, visit www.hightechlegion.com. Bye-bye.